Hello, everybody. How are we doing? So happy to be here.
Hi.
Hello.
All right, y'all. We're going to get to introductions in a second. I just want to say hello and welcome to everybody to this amazing event. My name is Alex Meda. I use the pronoun she, her, hers. I identify as a white, cis, Latina. And my visual description, I am a large woman, not scared to take up all the space. I have curly hair. I have behind me 2 bookshelves with books and all the things I need in my life to get this going. And I'm wearing a really big puff sleeve shirt with a checkered pattern with some blue that's given me life today. And I encourage everybody as we do our introductions to also give a visual description. I do just want to say that we are going to have a panelist join us late, so we'll be ready for that emergent process as it rolls, which moves me into our land acknowledgement, folks. So the practice of a land acknowledgement is that of disruption. It's also trying to make the invisible visible. We cannot get caught in the trap of just doing these because we are supposed to. So how can we use each time as a way to deeply assess what more we can do to learn in the making of the just world we all want to live in? Although we're meeting in virtual space, we want to acknowledge that the land on which each of us is currently located is unceded, occupied territory. It is the traditional land and ancestral home to Native American, Indigenous, and First Nations peoples. We honor their ancestors past, present, and future, and recognize their continued existence and contributions to our society. I personally am on the land of the Chumash and the Tongva Keech, now called Boyle Heights in East Los Angeles, a community that has long been under attack from gentrification, police raids, ICE raids, police brutality, and yet this community rises and celebrates its existence because the barrio no se venda. All right, I ask that you please put your own acknowledgement in the chat in the recognition of the people whose land you're on today. Lastly, I want to acknowledge that the U.S. was established on a foundation of theft, genocide, and enslavement, and we remain rooted in anti-Indigenous and anti-Black cultures, policies, and systems today, something that the theater can speak directly to and really make a liberated change towards. The horrors of settler colonialism are still very much present with us today, and we must interrogate our own complicity in these systems now. How are we honoring tribal governance? How are we making relationships with the original occupants of this land? How are we making reparations? How are we honoring sovereignty? These are the questions we must ask at every stage of our work and life. Let's take a breath. I always just like to get grounded and remember that even though I'm reading from this script that I've created here, what is the present moment? How am I connecting? And how am I absorbing all of that information consistently, newly, for finding more results and more interrogations? All right. I just want to hear from this amazing and esteemed panel. So I hate doing intros, and when I'm on a panel, I personally love to introduce myself. So I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves. Please include a visual description, your pronouns, your name, any affiliations you'd like to share, and most importantly, tell us a little bit about your artistic practice. All right. Leanna, can I toss it to you to start?
Sure. I feel like I set myself up for this by leaving myself unmuted. Hi, I'm Leanna Keyes. Leanna, like, that's right. I use she, her pronouns. I am a white woman with a head that is halfway shaved and then also halfway long and curly. I have on a sleeveless, I'm colorblind, so I don't actually know how to describe this pattern, but it's a bright pattern. I have a tattoo on my exposed arm. Behind me, there is a green screen, which has my company logo right here, superimposed over it. And then on my other side, there's a collection of plants and also a terrarium that houses my pet snake, assistant snake manager, aka ASM. I am the founder of Transcend Streaming. So I do live events in the theater world that are digital, fully live, the way that we are meant to be. And I'm running all of that from unceded Chickasaw territory in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm a multi-hyphenate. I do pretty much everything in theater. other than dance, because no one should ever have to see that. No one would pay. They would ask for refunds if I were a dancer in a show. But what I do right now is I produce fully live digital theater. I also have a book coming out next month called The Methuen Drama Book of Trans Plays, which is a collection of 8 plays by trans playwrights centering trans characters that are not just like the traditional transition story that is so often the only thing we get on these gosh darn stages. I design, I write, again, everything other than dancing. That's what I do. And that is me. I will cede my floor.
Beautiful. All right. Can we have, who's next? Who wants to share next?
I can go. My name is Gerardo Navarro. I go by he, him pronouns. I am from Los Angeles, California, but I'm currently in Pittsburgh studying acting at Carnegie Mellon University School of Drama. So I can give that kind of perspective on this whole topic. I identify as a Latino. I have short, somewhat mullety, wavy, dark brown hair. I'm wearing a white and green plaid shirt with a pink, light purple background. And I'm excited to be here and give my perspective. That's me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jessica.
Hi. Hello. Very happy to be here with you all. My name is Jessica Hanna. I go by she, her pronouns. I am currently on Tongva Quiche land in Los Angeles. And I am a white woman with blonde highlights, sitting in a Papazan chair with a purple dragonfly shirt and a white wall behind me. Let's see. I am a multi-hyphenate as well. Right now I'm a director, producer, maker, space maker. I co-founded and ran a space called the Bootleg Theater here in Los Angeles for about 12 years. I'm currently freelancing and I do a lot of different things. I'm also a member of the Kilroys, and I'm also the chair of the city company board. So doing lots of things to try to make more art happen. That's my jam.
That's delicious. Y'all are amazing. Thank y'all so much. Please continue to drop in the chat where you're from, what you're doing. And just as a point of like a business, we want to hear from you throughout the chat. Please, we're going to be taking questions from you directly. We're also just going to engage in a conversation. I have a couple of questions I'd love to ask these folks. But your questions are really what matters. So please don't hesitate to keep them coming. Keep that chat alive and on fire. And we also have a Menti link that they'll be dropping a couple of times where some of the questions that I'm asking the panelists, we also want to ask you. And we're leaving those polls open for the whole day so you can continue to add to them. And when we come back together later in the day, we're going to be looking at some of those results and talking about them. All right, to see where are we sharing affinity here? Where do we have divergent paths? All of that. All right, my friends, I'm going to jump us right into the first question, the first official question, if I can. And this is also one of the Menti questions. So, Gerardo, I'm going to throw it to you first, but this is going to be for everybody. All right. If you can please share a moment or experience this last year that has changed your path or your beliefs in the field forever.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's been many moments. I mean, just for me personally, I'm still in the stages where I'm getting my education and still figuring out. I'm really in the really early stages of figuring out exactly who I want to be in the field and what I want to be telling, what stories I want to be a part of. And so when COVID hit, that took really everybody by a storm. And I know when it came time to bring myself to the classes and bring just bring all of my energy, it was hard. Not just given COVID, but given the circumstances and everything that was going on in our country and is still going on in our country. I was in Pittsburgh and then was sent home in Los Angeles and had to leave all my things and take classes online from home in LA. And so it was really isolating, and it was really hard when it felt like it was no better time to create and to share and to inform and to, kind of uplift people's voices. I was in my room locked, with my computer. And I saw that as an opportunity to get writing. I think there are a lot of stories and a lot of important voices that have yet to be heard, that have yet to be seen. And so I took that opportunity to take it into my own hands and, kind of write my own stories and share my experience and the experience of the people before me. And so that's where this past year has kind of taken me, and kind of taking my craft and not waiting around for, let's say, a role to come or, an opportunity, but writing it for myself and really creating that path for myself. And hopefully inspiring other people to do so as well. I've met up with a lot of friends over Zoom, even if we're just sharing a Google Doc and just like writing ideas or sharing thoughts and just still finding ways, although we can't perform, in person in a theater with a large audience, finding ways to share, our souls and, be vulnerable with one another in such a tough time. And as I'm back in Pittsburgh currently, and we're doing a sort of hybrid model where you have classes in person and online. And I've really brought that with me. I've really brought that sense of ownership of my artistry and bringing that and creating. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. What you brought up made me think a little bit for those of us who were devising, or their like predominant mode of making was already in collaboration. I don't know if anybody could speak to this or would like to speak to this, but I know that I found my practice that was often not thought of as part of the mainstream theater has now risen in a level of its visibility. And I feel like it's the second coming of new excitement around deep collaborations. And I think you're speaking to that, right? Just the simple connection of even meeting in a Google Doc, a technology we had already, but how much more dependent have we been on it, and how much more have we found this technology to actually suit the work, which I think is a really good handoff maybe to Leanna to talk a little bit, right, about the work that you do.
I wanted to underline what you were saying there around like, this is an opportunity to reevaluate how we make and who we can make with. Like, being here in Memphis, like, my opportunities for collaboration are limited to a 30-mile radius. As now I can work with people not only across the country, but across the world in real time or asynchronously, right? Theater is no longer something that just happens at a theater in downtown LA at 7:00 on a Friday night. And if you can't make it, or if parking is bad, then you miss the window to get in, and suddenly like this thing that you were so excited about and is genuinely so cool, the stuff we do is so cool, was so inaccessible to so many people. This really hit me last summer when I was doing the Bay Area Playwrights Festival, which is a festival of 5 new plays from emerging writers. And in that, we had one particular play called Final Boarding Call by Stephanie Kuo. And that's a play that we probably could not / should not have done if we were trying to do it all in person, because that play has very specific casting and particularly language requirements. You need people who are fluent in several languages for that play. That just wouldn't have been available in the Bay Area because of the way that people who are particularly from East Asia are being pushed out of that area economically. So we were able to do that play. And literally, we had collaborators across 12 time zones, literally on opposite sides of the globe. So we had people in New York City, we had people in the San Francisco Bay Area, we had people in Hong Kong, we had people in Taiwan, all acting together in real time. And that was, only a few months into the pandemic. And then since then, the growth opportunity has been enormous. That was, we weren't doing that on Zoom. Basically, I was seeing Zoom readings and I was like, oh, okay, this is good for now, but like, what's next? What's better? So I really wanted to bring in, design opportunities so that we can bring in some of that theatrical language. So, at first during that festival, that would look like this, where you would have actors in their own homes on their laptop built-in webcams, and then comping them in together so that it would all be one stream going out. But it was more than just people in Zoom boxes. And that also gave us the ability to put in like very high quality captions, right? So everything was as accessible as I could physically find a way to make it. And then since then, I've continued to develop in that field, doing things like this, for example, with Theater Moo up in Minneapolis. So this is a production of Today Is My Birthday. And on this one, we have two actors who have never met in real life, one of whom is Emily Kuroda, who you may recognize from Gilmore Girls, in LA. And then we have Katie Bradley up here as well. And they're sitting behind desks that aren't real, right? Those are not real desks. Those are photos that they're being comped into with green screens. But then you may also notice that Emily Kuroda here is writing on a notepad that's on that desk. That is a real notepad on a desk that doesn't exist in real life. All of these tools existed before the pandemic, but theater, and this is, okay, I'm gonna save some of those spicy takes until later on, but like, this is a huge moment for us to recognize so many different disparate parts that actually you can pull together to make something truly wonderful and unique.
100%. And while some people are still arguing about what theater is in versus film, right? I think there are others who are forging ahead and finding the theatricality in all things that we know already is part of our vocabulary. So Jessica, I'd love to hear from you a little bit. Yeah.
I just want to yes to what Leanna's saying. And that was also my experience. I've been in conversation about streaming with theater folks and was reticent, I will readily admit. I was a little like, I don't know how this is going to work, and trying to figure that out before pandemic. And then all of a sudden pandemic really actually made the community pay attention in a different way and actually realize the resources that we already had, and then develop the resources that what has happened. I mean, Leanna, just what you're just showing, what you've done in the past year in terms of using the technology that we already had, but then also raising it up to another place. I had the opportunity to take a workshop with Peter Kuo from ACT. Yeah. And that was really, it was the phrase that he used was that we are creating shared imaginary three-dimensional space, both between for the audience, but also for the actors in this case, right? Because we're all in different boxes. And that phrase really made me go, oh wait, shared imaginary space is what we do in theater. When I walk in to see a play, I am saying, I know I'm in a theater, but I'm going to imagine that I'm with you so like that it all made sense to me in terms of that's extrapolating out. Right. And so, I was able to try to apply that to some of the projects, because I had a number of projects, of course, that got either canceled or were, in process. And so then how to look at how they could transform into this space. And so did a number of different projects, both as a director and a producer, just to try to keep everybody making things. I want to also echo the access that is being talked about here, that is incredible, and we cannot lose that. The idea of collaborating, I know there were plenty of I don't want to diminish. I know there were people collaborating through technology around the world before this. It is now much more prevalent and much more accepted, I guess, and looked to as a possibility. And I really want to encourage everyone to keep diving into that, because that kind of that collaboration, it's incredible. I mean, not just, the conversations you can have, but then the art you can make. Yeah. Leanna, please.
I just wanted to share a story of radical accessibility in this space that was like genuinely like, oh, this is the wave. We are in the wave now. We're not just like talking about it. Was I just did a production of a new play that was written specifically for Zoom by Noel Vinas for shotgun players out in Berkeley, California. And one of the things that we thought was important was to do a audio description day. And there had been some discussions around doing it as just like the video on demand version of it. And then we were like, no, we could find a way to do this live. Like, why? We don't want to just offer accessibility. We want to offer accessibility at the same level and to the same thoughtfulness as we would do any other more conventional way to stage or produce a play. So on one of our Sunday matinees, we used Zoom's, and this, I didn't even know that this existed before, but it's a interpretation feature. And so we gave space for people and like walked people through, okay, if you want to listen in on an audio description track, which is being provided live by a professional, you just access this interpretation feature, and then you can listen in to an audio description live, which was super important on that play because that play had a live interaction element. So anyone who came to see that had the opportunity, if they wanted to engage in the live content. And there was no barriers for anyone who wanted to come and see that. It's like, we could have been doing this all along, but now that we are, it's like, oh my God, we need to learn our lesson here and keep doing this.
That's right. And listen, all of the, everything has its limitations in terms of access, right? So we're still facing, like, who doesn't have Wi-Fi, who doesn't have access is a question for these virtual spaces. It's also still a very real question in our actual theater spaces. How have they not been accessible for forever? Some have been doing so much work in that movement forward, and it's so connected to the climate crisis, which we know is also a racial crisis, a racial justice crisis. Climate crisis is a racial justice, so it's all intermixed. I really love the feeling that I'm getting from everybody here that it's not an either or, right? I know some people are like, I just want to get back on the stage. And I think, how can we continue to build these two parallel tracks, right, that can also intersect? And the hybridity of stuff is really exciting. So I wanna keep it pushing as always. Yeah, Jessica, please come in.
Because I saw someone saying in the chat too that I miss being on stage. I miss the live, like the being in person. Totally get that. And really want to encourage everyone to think of, just because we're in this it seems like a two-dimensional screen, to not forget about your physical body and space, which is still happening even when you are on this two-dimensional plane. One of the things that I just directed at Cal Poly Pomona, Feifu and Her Friends, which we did in Zoom and recorded, but we did a design concept and rehearsed for a good solid 2 months. And part of that was like physical warm-up, getting, doing things that we would be doing in the room, because there is, all of those elements are still at play when you are in a virtual space, because you're in your physical body. And so how do you activate your physical body and use the tools that you either are learning about being a physical performer, let's just say. And I found that many of the exercises that I would do in the room, I could find a way to do a version of them in here as well. And it's about continuing to find connection and develop, as you're trying to develop ensemble, there are ways to do that in these rooms as well. And to remember that even when you're working those muscles in these rooms, those muscles, you have to, like, when you get back into a room with live people, you're going to use those same muscles. So the practice, there are places to practice and to keep honing and refining your skills, even if they seem like different places. It's still your body in space that is going to be creating those skills and working those muscles. So I totally get wanting to be with people in space. Trust me. But at the same time, I know that like everything I'm doing this year is going to come with me when I come back into the room with people.
That's right. That's right. And how do we continue to develop those opportunities to like you said, your own methodology, your own artistic practice. Embodied practice is similar in person. We can still make connections. We can still feel that heartbeat. And designers and creators have given us so many tools. Thank you for sharing that, Jessica. Anybody else on any specific moment that really forever changed anything for them before I move on to my next question?
I mean, sorry, I want to jump in and talk about the conversation about racial justice in this country, that and the uprisings of this summer, that and the conversation amongst, I mean, in the whole country, and then also the conversation within the industry, our industry, the theater industry. And I think it's a reckoning moment on all fronts, and a reckoning moment that cannot be left behind. Or as we and I don't know, it's been coming up in some conversations that I've been having lately, because as things are starting to open up, ramp up a little bit, you know, things are starting to happen. We can't let those conversations go, and the actions that have to come out of it, because it is, the urgency of the moment has not dissipated. And I just want to, so that, I mean, if you're talking about a moment, I mean, I think that the moment continues, and we have to continue to have continue the conversations, and look at our practices, and how we make things together, and how can we care for each other as we make things in a different way. Yeah.
Thank you. I want to let anybody else also chime in on that. I do just want to name, we are waiting on a panelist to join us, but currently, and as we enter this conversation, I'm aware that we don't have a Black body in this panel right now, right? I just really want to name that. Mikaal will be joining us, hopefully, but I think it's really important. Forever, nothing about us without us, right? I think how we think about our artistic practice and these virtual tools cannot be divorced from all of this learning and interrogation people have to do. And I also just want to name, like, let us remind ourselves that this reckoning took place because we were all watching a lynching on film. And how can we not divorce that from the current moment? What does that mean to people who are now fielding a ton of opportunities because of that? Some of us can't divorce the changes as a result of that. So I don't know, does anybody have anything to add to that conversation? And silence is okay, folks. We're making space for the thinking and for the finding of solutions. Please, anybody in the chat, lift up anything here. If maybe I offer a more specific question, I'll say this. Suzuki, and I might get the quote wrong, right? Something to the effect of, even when theater dies, I will remain a theater artist. And I've thought about that a lot this year in relationship to what does it mean to identify with a field in turmoil, in a field, for many of us, predominantly white theaters, first encountering this information as new. So anything come from any of those inspiration points for you all to speak to?
Look, I'll jump on this. I feel like my voice is not the most important voice on this, but I will be the first. Other people can please do interject. I think something that I am witnessing is that many predominantly white institutions now recognize, oh, things should be different. And some of them are even, using this opportunity to like change up their staffs. They're like, okay, we're just gonna hire a lot of BIPOC administrators. But what I also see a lot of, and this is, I'm not specifically calling out anyone in particular, a thing that I'm seeing a lot of is well-meaning liberal artistic directors or boards who are being like, okay, we're gonna do a Black Voices series. Oh, we're just gonna like call for plays by queer Black trans women. And there are many wonderful queer Black trans women playwrights, but many people in power, the way that they think that they can fix things is by like doing a play or two by the most marginalized person they can think of in their limited imagination, and specifically curating like a play and a type of play that's about what they think that imaginary type of person should be writing about to make them feel better. And they're like, look at, we're doing the work, we're changing things by doing this radical play, this so different thing, which by the way is actually going to be on our second stage, not on our main stage. And like, can you find the lead actor? Because I don't know any like 40 something Black women. You know, like that's the conversation that's happening a lot. And it's also, I have been in a lot of rooms now in the digital world where it's like almost everyone in the room is a person of color, is queer, is woman, is trans, like all of these things. And almost everyone on the email chains that the rehearsal reports go to is a white person who's worked at the theater for 10 years, right? Because that's who the admin is. That's who the designers, the go-to designers are. So it is a complicated moment to both like hold on to certain rich traditions and to lift up voices who have been suppressed for so long, but do it in a way that isn't just like scoring, oh, we're doing the right thing as a predominantly white institution points on the actual in the room labor of the people that have been suppressed for so long.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to just kind of like echo what Leanna had to say and just kind of, I guess, throw out this idea of there's a level, I believe, there's a level of stepping back that I think needs to happen, where it's just kind of like, again, going back to this like idea of like having a show and being like, oh, this is what we need to do to fix things. When in reality, like Leanna was saying, there's nobody behind the table. The people who are running this, there's nobody behind the table who is here, who is actually providing, you know, these voices. It's just kind of like a presentation. It's like the answer, you know, to fix this problem that I think we've only scratched the surface of. You know, I think even just doing a play written by queer Black trans, you know, that's only scratching, you know, that's only beginning. You know, there's so much more work. You need to get these people in the rooms. You need to get these people, you know, like who's the director, who is the stage manager, you know. It's like it kind of goes back to the conversation earlier about collaboration, like who is in this room of collaboration. I think that's really important. And I think it's more about like, I guess, the roots of where a particular project or, you know, an idea or play or musical, whatever it is, like who is it that's at the roots of it? You know, who's not the pretty feathers on like, you know, the end of the tree or the flowers. It's like, it's important who's in the room.
1,000,000%. It's also important who's in the audience. And especially when we're talking about the questions you brought up, Leanna, about, you know, when we venture into quote unquote poverty porn or trauma porn, right? Like who's that audience for? And if you're consistently thinking about your audience only as your white audience and that is neutral, we have to end that practice. Who is this for? How are we doing it? So Jessica, any thoughts on any of that, which is so big, but any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I want to see, I think the conversation is about decentering. And how do we put, like you're talking about, Gerardo said, like, and Leanna said, how do I make sure that the people who are making choices have power in situations do not all look like me? And what can I do to participate in that action? If I have some power in those situations, how do I make space at a table make space, and then step away, and allow collaborators to work, even, work without me, and be a cheerleader for that work. That is part of my practice. I think also in terms of where we put our attention, not just as artists, but as you say, as audience members. I cannot wait to go see shows again. I saw all kinds of shows. I've been watching stuff online. And I think it's really powerful, or the power we have as an audience in terms of what we are going to go spend our time, our money, our energy on. And then also demanding things from the companies, either that you go to see, work for. They have to listen. And the thing is, the more of us that can continue to raise this up. I feel like there definitely was a point in the last year where they could not ignore anymore, and had to, in some form or another, at least read the demands, whether or not then action was taken. But that became something that, was really effective, I think, in a lot of ways. I also want to point to that I know from some things that I'm personally involved with, that there are people doing work that we're not seeing yet. And I don't know that, what to speak to everyone or the whole field. But I do know that this is something that is being not just talked about. I think there are actions being taken that we're not necessarily seeing yet. And if you don't know if the company that you're working with, or the company that you admire, or the artist that you admire, if you don't know what they're up to, or if things are happening, ask them. Demand to know what are you doing about these things. I want to just encourage everyone to be active in this process.
That's right. I really just want to lift up what you said about when you made the shift to what we to I think it's something I want to encourage everybody to do, especially, of course, white folks, right? Like white supremacy culture. This is for white folks to dismantle. Okay. I want to name that real clear. And yet we also have lateral harm. We also have internalized oppressions and racism. And how have, as BIPOC folks growing up in this system, as marginalized folks, as trans folks, how are we also responsible for interrogating those behaviors in ourselves? And I just really want to ask, anybody here, what are the ways in which you're personally taking action or moving towards risk? I think a lot of times it's really easy to settle into where you don't have privilege and operate from that place. How are you experiencing perhaps operating from where you have the most privilege? And so where are you taking risks? Where are you saying no? Where are you passing it on? I'd love to hear any tools that you all are using around that you can share with the audience today.
Yeah. So at least I would say, like, in my, I guess, immediate world here at school, I've also very much have been doing what I can to also take that step back, because I notice I am also of a certain level of privilege, and doing what I can to be there for, the Black students in our school, and kind of like, just kind of being at their side and doing what I can, because at a predominantly white institution, it's very hard to find a voice. And I kind of wanted to echo what Jessica was saying earlier about how we've kind of reached a point in our society where accountability has become really important. And there have been people who have spoken up. And I think we've reached a point where we are not afraid to speak up anymore. And as I would say, at least as what I've witnessed here at school, is like, it can still be hard. We're students, and there's still that power dynamic between a student and a teacher, and let's say like an actor and a director, or, whatever. But doing what I can to take that step back and be like, how can I help you? And I think especially for the Asian community, as of recently, it's been really hard. I know there's a very small population of like the Asian community within my school, but doing what I can to reach out to people and be like, you know what, let's sit back for a second. Let's do what we can to help you and uplift your voice, and do what we can to change for you, because I don't think we can move forward if we're not all, together.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Yeah, Leanna.
So part of being a young theater professional is recognizing that in fact you do have power, and in fact people will listen to you, especially if you are organized together. Many of you are probably going to be looking at internships, at fellowships, at apprenticeships. And many of those are going to be they're going to be offering you housing and shared housing and like $100 a week. And they're going to be like, oh yeah, you're going to learn so much. You're going to be working 60 hours a week, but you'll have great experiences. And part of being a young professional is looking at that and being like, that's not ethical. That's not even a little bit ethical. And realizing that even if you could, let's say that you are blessed and you come from a home, or you've worked really hard and you have the money to be able to do that, recognize that many, many, many people will not have that. And if you take that internship, if you take that apprenticeship, what you're saying to the theater company is, yeah, that's fine. People want these jobs. This is great. Actually, the reality is they are exploiting you. They are exploiting you. They are exploiting people like you, and they are excluding people. They can say, oh, we can't possibly afford to pay people. Then it's like, okay, well, is this not work? Is this just for fun? No, it is work. It is fun oftentimes, but it is also work. It is also labor. And as, creators who are in, I know a lot of you are actors. Some of you are playwrights. I see playwrights in the chat. Some of you are maybe streaming producers like me, technicians, all these sorts of things. You have more power in what the actual show looks like than you think you do. If you notice that there's some costume that's like kind of racist, you can actually just like talk to the director or whoever you feel like you have a good relationship with and be like, hey, that's kind of racist, right? Like, am I the only one who's seeing this? Because chances are, if you're thinking it and you're seeing it, other people are saying it and just haven't said so yet. As a young person, as a creator, as a creative person, you have agency to decide what you're going to be working in, who you're going to be working for, who you're working with, and what gets done with your work. For example, in my plays, I have two little anecdotes that I want to share, and then I want to hear from other folks, particularly Jessica, who has a lot of power in terms of like institutional stuff and like managing and running a theater. I want to hear about that. One thing is that in my play that's in the Methuen anthology that's coming out, that Olivia linked in the chat, the casting note that I gave for that is, no one in this play needs to be white or pretty or skinny. Rue is a trans woman, please cast accordingly. And like just that one little stage direction, like it would be easy to just write out like, no one in this play needs to, anyone in this play can have any of these races and disabilities, and just like go through like the list of all the categories of marginalization. I think that would be easy. But by framing it in like a somewhat flippant way, what I'm actually doing is making a casting director be like, oh, I have assumptions about what people should be and what they could be. And like, weird, I keep casting BIPOC folks as the villain. That's weird. And the casts that I've gotten for that play have been so much more interesting because of that casting note. The other thing is that I forced a recasting of a play of mine that was cast badly, and I had to threaten to pull the rights to do it. Like, it was one of my first big productions in the San Francisco Bay Area. I was super hyped about it, and I wrote into my contract that I get approval over casting, and then they cast it without consulting me. And I was like, okay, weird, who's the cast? And it had been clearly written for a white trans woman and a black trans man, and they cast a white non-binary person and a white trans man. And I was like, did you read the play? And they were like, well, yeah, they said you could do some rewrites. And I was like, no. I said I would adapt it a little bit if there was like little things, but you're completely changing the substance of this story. And I had to be prepared to walk away. This is the thing. You always have to be prepared to walk away if you feel that something unethical is being asked of you, or is being done with your work?
I can't follow that up. Like, yes, we're going to let that hang in the air. Oh, man. I have another mentee question I want to lift up, but any responses to that? Since Jessica kind of got thrown to you a little bit.
Well, I want to, that's leadership, what Leanna is talking about. And like leadership, we all have the opportunity to be leaders. And part of that is about my own buy into my own work and my beliefs and what I do that. And I am going to be a leader for myself. And I know that sometimes it feels like we don't have power in these situations at the same time as we do, because we get to choose where we put our energy and our time and our art. And there is a scarcity mentality that I also hope that will be going away. We can get rid of that as part of what theater making is, and to think of the abundance that we do have. And because that scarcity mentality, I think, also puts, I know I have been felt in the position of, I got to say yes. Oh, I can let something else, like, let me see if I can let some of that the red flags I'm having go away because I need the job. Red flags are right. To pay attention to those things is really important, and to raise your voice is really important.
That's right. And all of that takes muscle building, right? It's not innate. It is something we have to do a deep work on, but also surrounding yourself with people that are going to push you to learn more, to speak up more. How are we surrounding ourselves with those folks? And we talk a lot about reputation in this field, and it's easy to be broken. It's easy to be repaired. What do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known as the person causing problems and disrupting when something is wrong? I do. Give me that label, please, right? And there's a way to translate that into more opportunities rather than feeling like it can only be a limiter. So speaking of limitations, I want to ask a question. It's also on the mentee, but I'm dying to hear y'all's answer to this. What is your most abundant, priceless, overflowing gift that you can give to others? Gerardo, could I throw it to you first? I haven't heard your voice in a little bit. You want me to repeat it?
I might need a second.
It's all good. All right, let me just say the question again so we can let it wash over us, all right? So, what is your most valuable, priceless, abundant, and overflowing gift that you can give to others? And I'm going to add, and to yourself, because sometimes we need to replenish that well too.
I think one of the first things that comes to mind is honesty. I think honesty goes a long way. I think in being honest, it opens the space for others too. And that goes along with being vulnerable. That goes along with, just kind of being true, being proud. So yeah, I mean, I would say honesty. I think it's a really beautiful thing. It's a hard thing, but it's really precious and it's really beautiful.
Los pelitos se están parando, right? Like I'm feeling that because it is a key that can unlock so much. Thank you for that offering. Thank you. Anybody else on the panel want to answer?
I'll go. I'm going to say my attention. And that meaning where I'm giving my focus and the way that I give my focus. And it was interesting as you added on and to yourself. I was like, yes, that is also part of it. Because by being attentive and present, there will be more that comes from whatever it is that I'm participating in. I will hear more. I will be able to understand what is needed or what is being looked for, what it needs to be created in the situation. But yeah, I'm going to say attention, focus, attention. Yeah.
I think for me, part of it is recognizing when I need to speak up and when I need to not, and Gerardo, this is related to something that you talked about in your very intro, where you were like, okay, this is an opportunity for me to like write and create and like put some stories out there that haven't traditionally been out there. And I was like, hell yeah, I want to know more about that. Because part of my process during coronavirus has been realizing like I have put out my plays into the world. I'm like making this anthology. And also, my voice is not actually that important right now in the national conversation. Like, yes, I am queer. Yes, I am trans. Yes, I'm like all these various things. But like, actually, what I want to do right now is produce works and be a supporter for plays by and about BIPOC artists. Like, actually, with all the different skills that I have, I could be doing a lot of things. That feels way more important to me than being like, I am the most important person to be having this conversation. Which is why, like, don't tell anyone, I give big discounts to like BIPOC theaters that want to work with me, and like coalitions and trainings. I'll give discounts because those people are doing good work in the world. And like, fortunately, now that I have my own business, I have the flexibility to like set my own rates and decide like, okay, I can like my time, I can choose how I want to use my time. Right now, what I want to do is I want to use that time to amplify other people's voices rather than my own. It'll be my turn at some point, but for right now, other people are more important than me.
Generosity, abundance, honesty, attention. I'm hearing these, and they're feeding us. They feed us. Thank you all. I have another metaphoric question. And please, audience participants, please drop questions because I want to open it up to you and let you ask direct questions of the panel. Okay, so one of my favorite artists, Residente, he says in a song, there are skies beyond skies. And I want to ask you all, how do you imagine the skies beyond the ones we currently see in our field? What are the new paradigms you are building? How are you continuing to expand your imagination as artists?
I'm gonna throw another metaphor back at you. Something that it's not really connected entirely, but I think it makes sense to me, is, like I said earlier, I'm from Los Angeles, where it's sunny 24/7. And now I'm here in Pittsburgh, and the weather is almost completely opposite. It is cloudy most definitely every day. Even when it's sunny, it's raining and cold, and it's a completely different environment. It's a different world. And it's springtime, but it's been freezing for this week, and it's been raining, and the clouds are always like, they're just so thick. And something that I really was able to comprehend and understand as of this year, and that makes me feel, sort of content, is that at the beginning I was like, I hate this weather. I hate it so much. Like, why can't the sun be out? Like, I just need the sun. I need vitamin D. Like, I just need to feel, full. And something that I realized is like that above the clouds, the sun is still there. It's still shining as bright as it does in LA. It's still full with all that radiant and vibrant energy that I know it will give me eventually. It's just hidden by the clouds. And the reason I say that is, I guess, to kind of throw out that as crazy as the world is right now, as clouded as everything is, the sun is still there. There's still hope, and it'll come through. It'll come through if, like, we fight through it. We do what we have to do. And so I guess, I don't know if this really answers your question, but I know that there is a sun above the clouds. I know that if we continue to fight and work together and collaborate, and I think one of the most important things is love one another, is we will always be able to reach the sky above the sky that we can currently see.
Thank you. Deep gratitude for that answer. Anyone else?
It's hard to follow something so beautiful. I'm like constructing metaphors. I'm like, quick, artist brain, go, go, go.
It's okay. We can also circle back because I'm still seeing those light streams come through the clouds, right? So yeah, please pop in whenever something comes to you. I have another question. It speaks a little bit to some of the Q&A that's coming in, and I want to get all of your thoughts on this. There is some pervading thoughts here about what does that mean. All of this is great that you ask, when do you stand up? When do you speak up? But what does that mean for early career artists who might have less positional power, or they don't have that luxury? I want to give my answer is like, I want to flip that narrative. I think you have all the power in this moment. You're not mired by relationships yet. You are defining for yourself who and what you want to work with. So how can you flip that actually and find the power in it? I know that can seem naive in a way, right? You're saying I can't say no to jobs, but there are many ways to make money rather than not just the ones you traditionally seek, which is working for somebody whose ethics you don't believe in. But I'd love to, can we give these folks any tools on how to flip that narrative? Any personal experiences y'all can share around that?
There's the second to last paragraph of one of Anne Bogart's books, A Director Prepares, that basically starts with "Don't wait." And basically, it's a paragraph of, don't wait for the right circumstances, don't wait for the right amount of money, don't wait for and that is something. Even and I want to echo what you just said about, in terms of making, finding ways to align yourself with things that you believe in, starting now, like not having to backtrack when you're or however old I am, so that you then have to go back and like try to fix things or try to find other people, or why not start now? Like, start from a strong base in yourself, and also to look at, if you do have feelings about power structures that you're heading towards, or like there's an institution that I want to work there, but they don't do the things that I want to do, then I would say, what is it that why do you want to work there? And what other places are there around you that you could work at? And also, that "don't wait" from Anne is also about making your own work. Find your collaborators, find the people that resound for you, and start making the work. That will lead to places. That will lead to other places. And also, the work that you're making will probably attract more artists, institutions that are aligned with what you believe, because you are actually putting your energy into what you believe, and that will attract like. Yeah.
That's right, Jessica. It's so helpful. I want to dig a little even further, especially those of us who have started our own organizations or run an organization. I think the question, something we take for granted, is like, how do I find the people that I want to be around? Like, how do I actually meet people? How do I actually build those relationships? And I'd love to hear thoughts on how y'all have done it, or are doing it, or would like to do it. I think people really want to know. And just to start out saying, there's no one methodology that's going to answer that for everybody. You will go and you will develop. But one thing you said really specifically is don't wait. And I think that also to me translates, don't wait until you feel ready. Don't wait until you feel you know what you're doing. Don't wait until you feel that, okay, now I can be accepted. I've learned X, Y, Z. So yeah, any additional thoughts and tools, and how do you meet people? How do you build relationships? How do you reach out, cold call, like anything like that?
Something that I think about a lot is that a lot of the like goal organizations are things that have been around for like 40, 50 years. CTG has been around since 1967. But at one point, CTG had been around for 3 months, right? At one point, CTG had been around for 2 years. People make things. Not all of them stick. Not all of them become CTG. But they form relationships regardless of whether or not they become the huge next big thing. I think a lot of people are concerned about being the huge next big thing. Actually, what matters is like, Are you doing something that you think is good right now? Like, great. Will that eventually lead to future stuff down the line? Almost certainly, right? Like networking sounds really scary. It's like, oh, who can I like get just friendly enough with to like exploit them, or like they'll give me a job or something like that. Actually, networking is like making good art with your friends. That's what networking is. Like find some people who like think some stuff would be interesting to do, and then you do it. And I'm hand waving the economics of this a little bit, right? Like it is not actually just as simple as the way that I'm framing it. There are certain people who are able to just like self-produce a show or to do, start a theater company. These are not small things. But something that a playwright named Azure D. Osborne Lee said to me, or said on a panel that I was seeing, he's in the book that I'm putting out, that blew my mind was, a lot of people, this was back right around when George Floyd was murdered, and we were on a and he was on a panel talking about like not specifically that, but it came up because it was a primarily BIPOC panel of theater people, and part of it was just like a lot of people were asking, what can we do? And Azure was like, what can you do? And just having that flipped around and asked back, like, oh my God, actually, there's a lot of things that I could do. Like during COVID, a friend of mine was like having trouble breathing and like definitely had COVID. And she was like, oh my God, I think I need like a humidifier. And my first instinct was to like go online and like see when can I get like that delivered. And then I was like, it would be like an hour's walking distance to like go and buy one and then hand deliver it to her. But that means that she would get it today rather than 3 or 4 days from now when she may not be able to breathe for 3 days. And I was like, yeah, but I have all these meetings. And I was like, fuck the meetings. Like I can just reschedule this. Like actually you can do so much more than you think you can do. Like at no point in my education at various institutions or at various theater companies did anyone sit me down and be like, hey, here's how you like start your own company and like get a logo and like get a website. No one sat me down and taught me how to do that. I just was just like, all right, I can follow steps. I can just like go through this thing. I'll figure this out. The essence, I think, of being a theater person is seeing that something doesn't exist and then making it exist. That's what theater is about, right? There could be this production. There could be this design. There could be this. Make that thing happen using the power of friendship and hard work and determination.
That's right. That's right. And what I would add to that is like, if we stop being afraid of failing, what could we learn? What could we move through? I think we have to recognize that like the rehearsal process is actually a process to learn how to fail. Oh, yes. Panelist, thank you. Mikaal, thank you for joining us. Hi. I'm going to close my thought and can I pass it to you? And can I ask you to introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and a little bit about your artistic practice. It's just so good to have your voice in the room. Ooh, I cannot hear you yet. Mm-hmm. No worries, no worries. While you are working that out, I am going to pose another question here to the audience and to the panelists. Excuse me. We've talked about a lot of different paths on how to make change, how to make art, how to come together, right? And there's no one methodology. I think there's so many tools at our fingertips, but I wanted to kind of frame what are some pathways that I think we're all being asked to do. Some of them contradictory. And so the question is kind of a yes.
Okay.
Hello.
Whoa.
Wonderful.
That was terrible. I was saying so many nice things about all of you, and you got none of it.
It's all good. You got the floor now.
I apologize for being late. Thank you for having me. My name is Mikaal Sulaiman, he, him, his. I'm currently in Atlanta, Georgia right now with my family. And yeah, we had some things going on that took me out of this panel, so I apologize. But I'm a sound designer, composer, writer, director, editor, and a hyphenate that lives in hyphenated worlds and groups of people who all kind of transcend different art forms and, ways of seeing the worlds and, their POVs to kind of create something really unique. And I'm just grateful to be here. So enough about me.
No, not at all enough about you. But thank you for joining us. I'm gonna get back to the question I was asking. I'm gonna throw it straight to you if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the question is, with all of these different paths towards change, okay, which is ahead for you, right? So if option A is it's dismantle for me, option B is it's building new paradigms for me, or C, I will walk both as a reformist and revolutionary. Which would you choose?
I mean, being a hyphenate, it's kind of hard for me to ever choose one thing, I do think right. C is probably a little bit more. Are you looking just for the answer C, or are you looking for an explanation?
From your words.
Yeah, so I do think that there's a lot of dismantling that needs to happen. I am part of the theatrical community of We See You that's focused on the theater community. And, a lot of the things that We See You is talking about is about dismantling and just changing things from the ground up, that it's time. And especially after this kind of pause year of coronavirus year, I think we're all kind of seeing that we can start anew and that we don't have to go back to the way things were. I'm a sound designer and composer, so most of my life is on the road and going from tech to tech to tech to tech. I'm oftentimes doing 3-4 shows at the same time. And the only reason why I mention that is to say that, the self-care that is necessary is impossible in that kind of way of working. Now, of course, I can say no to certain jobs, but of course, we all know that the jobs pay just enough to be able to pay for rent. So then you have to, get more jobs. And, I think even some of my own thinking around money and spending, as I actually just say that, is something that I also need to start to rethink and reimagine, And I also think that there is a way for us to build on the way things are, because I think when you start over, that means you're having to iterate a lot. You're starting from the beta, and so the beta process takes time, and I think that there's a lot of things that are really good in our industry and in our communities, but I do think that most of it needs to be just reimagined, and some of that reimagining will require, starting from scratch,
Oh, thank you. Yes. Any other panelists want to jump in on that?
Both.
All of the above. All of the above.
like there are some cool orgs out there that I think can be reformed, and then there's other orgs that I just have no interest in reforming or are resistant to reform and are like, no, in fact, I want to continue to be racist and sexist. And I'm like, all right, you do you. Not going to support you, right? I'm also deeply excited at the opportunity for revolution, and if I only had to pick one, right? Why the heck not just build something that is good from the ground up rather than going back? Oh, I can't wait to go back. Actually, do you miss the 10 out of 12s? I don't. Do you miss 6 days a week? And you can't do anything, and you miss all family situations, and if you miss one rehearsal, everyone says, or people are like, oh, you're letting your whole cast down. Come in even though you're sick. I don't miss that. There's an opportunity here to rebuild things. Not only rebuild, but just straight up build things.
Yeah, things we never even had. Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts?
I just want to piggyback on the idea of 10 out of 12s are insane. And we're all just going along because that's what we're supposed to do. And what Leanna, if I'm pronouncing that right, Leanna, said is so key of probably most of it is about rebuilding. But I do think that I'm optimistic, but probably naively so, about how we can help change minds, because kicking people out is, one thing, or not people, but organizations rather, is one way. And I do think that those organizations need to recognize the harm that they've done, and really own it, not just, post something on Instagram or Facebook about it, you know. And that owning requires, you know, hiring practices, casting practices, you know, audience engagement, not just, you know, calling the predominantly Black audience, you know, the outreach audience, you know, like there's a pandering that happens when people want to try to own up but not fully own it, you know. And when I say people, again, I mean organizations. And it's just, to Leanna's point, I just think it's a lot of probably more rebuilding than, or excuse me, starting from the ground up than, you know, restructuring, you know.
That's right. And so I want to throw it to the full group here. Often we think of these things, or I think white culture puts it almost as like, this is the EDI work and this is the artwork and we need to work on our EDI work, rather than recognizing that EDI work that's centering human first actually is how we get to better art, right? The 10 out of 12s were not designed that way so that the show could be better. It's about money. So it's not allowing the show to actually have the collaboration that we have with all these artists and designers under the same roof, man. So yeah. Any thoughts on that before I kick us off to an audience question?
I want to echo a yes to all that is being said, and the changing of our culture, both large country-wise, our culture within our industry. I mean, the word that keeps coming up for me is care, in terms of both how we care for each other as we are working together, and also how how the organization cares for artists and cares about how the art gets made. Again, I go back to the thing that we have to ask and demand. And I hear you. I agree about the more we can create from this place, as opposed to going back and fixing. I'm more excited about that. Or there's some kind of, is there a way in these larger organizations to give leadership to people and then follow their lead and actually change that way, as opposed to trying to change or make change on the people who are the leaders? I don't know if that makes sense, but that I don't know that works. I feel like people, that's the performative, that's the thing that has happened in the past. And so actually changing who are the leaders. And I know I'm like, again, going back to the I, what can I do to help, like, to help put those, to ask for that from the organizations that I support? What can I do to lift up the people I think should be leaders, and to help to promote them in some form or another, to say, hey, look at these great ideas over here. And that can be as small as, you know, the conversation that I have with a friend to, oh, I'm the producer on this. Okay, then I'm going to decide who's going to be populating this, who are the artists who are going to be populating this creation. And I'm going to be really conscious about it. That's my choice. That's on me.
Thank you. We have 2 questions from the audience, and I'm going to a little bit condense and share, and y'all just pick up where you'd like. If you can't afford taking unpaid opportunities and thus can also not afford to create your own projects, and most importantly, paying others to be in your projects, what should you do? And how can we produce and support BIPOC theaters and involve BIPOC people without anyone feeling tokenized? Any takers?
Yeah, that's a really hard one. I'll try to tackle the first one first. I think right now, creating theater, fortunately, is becoming more and more understood as being any group experience that is rehearsed and presented to an audience. You know, even if the rehearsal is to understand that it's not supposed to be premeditated, right? And so I think, you know, part of the institutionalized way of seeing theater is that it belongs on a stage. You need to have a red curtain. You need an audience with certain types of seats, blah, 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 blah. Like a theater and a theatrical experience can be something that could be a person making a happening, you know, and I'm sure there's certain people in this panel who know about happenings, and it's a movement that happened, I believe in the 60s or 70s, where there would be like group events that would happen that would be almost a theatrical experience in protests oftentimes. And so I think if we start to, both on the institutional level, like CTG and other major theater companies around the country, start to have more experiences that don't happen in these 500-seat theaters, and allow people to understand that theater can really happen anywhere. And so people don't feel like they're lacking, but rather start to think more creatively about creating theatrical experiences. And to the second question, I think, you know, to what, you know, Jessica was saying as well, in regards to like, if you are the producer, because I don't know who asked this question, if this person who asked the question is part of the BIPOC community or not. But, you know, if you're not, you know, recognizing that just having a full cast of BIPOC people and you're the producer, artistic director, whatever, doesn't automatically make that an inclusive experience for them. Sometimes that can actually be a really uncomfortable experience, because we all know this has happened, and there's no disrespect, and all the things I'm saying is not about accusations or why people should feel bad about their past, you know, misjudgments or judgments that they've made, because maybe they don't look at it as being a misjudgment. But we all know that there have been August Wilson plays that have happened where all of the creative staff, including the artistic director and the director, are all white, you know, and the whole entire cast is Black on stage. And so that in and of itself is a little bit of a hostile environment, because we don't know if we as the actors on stage, I'm speaking as a Black person, I'm Black African American, for people who are on stage, if we don't really think something really works right, or, oh, that costume idea doesn't really feel like it's part of our community, or we don't actually talk like that, you know, to say that out loud could risk your job, could risk, to your, you know, the audience member's question, risk their financial income, which we all are on the knife's edge with, you know. And so, you know, it's about giving positions, it's about giving leadership, and recognizing that the people that you try to bring into the fold, and again, on the leadership level, whether it be artistic directors, designers, so and so forth, that you really give them space and time to be able to speak what they think might need to be heard, you know, and that doesn't always happen. So hopefully that touched on some of those things.
Thank you. Other
100%.
thoughts? Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to amplify that. It's about agency, right? Like, who actually has the decision-making power, and like trusting people. You know, even if it doesn't make, like, you know, there's plenty of white artistic directors out there who are like, I don't know about this thing. Like, yeah, I'm doing this BIPOC play, and the director, the writer might even be, but like, I don't know, couldn't this be different? But like, actually, you kind of just like need to let people do their work and trust that they know what they are doing and telling their own story, right? And I was thinking about our audience in particular, how many of folks are like early career, younger actors, right? And how this applies, you know, not just in the like big picture artistic director sense, but also in the like, I'm just in the rehearsal room sense. You know, that level of trust is still there, even in the like acting beat to acting beat moments where, you know, you may not fully understand why your scene partner may make a certain choice, but understand that they are bringing their own sort of like cultural perspective to that moment, to that character, to how this works, and be like, okay, yeah, I can run with this for a little bit. Let's, you know, let me learn from this moment, rather than just saying, oh no, I think it should be like this.
Yeah, let those layers, those artistic layers build and scaffold, right? So going back to that earlier first question about if I don't have the money to do this, I want to hear the panel's thoughts on what are things that independent artists can really do to help put them in a better position. So for example, I'll throw one out to get the ideas rolling, but how are you building your own audience that you can bring with you to wherever you go? That doesn't necessarily cost money. For example, how are you, if you don't have money to make a show, how are you still building and sharing your ethos or your values through an artistic practice that doesn't cost money on your socials, for example? Bad idea, but just throwing it out there. Does that lift up anything for folks on the panel that they want to share? Tools again. I'm obsessed with tools.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, I think social media is such a great platform. It's well, it has its things, but it's I think it's really great for connecting with people and getting out there and finding people. You can look up a hashtag of something that interests you, and you can find millions of people who have hashtag that same thing, who are also into that kind of thing. And it's such a great place to like just really network and connect with people to a certain level. But there are also, I believe, like platforms like YouTube. Even if you don't have the money for a camera, you have a camera on your phone. And, it's like, even if it's just recording like a short little film, like I know on my social media, like I have like a little camcorder that doesn't record very good quality, but I record just about, like every day. And then I put like a little video together, and just something as simple like that, I think has the same power as theater, where it's like people like find joy out of it, and it brings them, laughter, and it makes them smile. And it's even just like sharing things like that, like on YouTube, on Vimeo, on all these, platforms that are accessible for so many people, and connecting through that way, I think it doesn't cost a penny.
Remember that relationships are two ways. Like if your primary like relationship with social media and the people who are behind, the likes is like, hey, you should think I'm really cool. That's not going to be nearly as fun for you and as productive and as meaningful work as, oh, actually, you're super cool. I want to amplify you. Like if I fully confess, I am not that good at social media. This is one of my weaknesses that I am working on, right? Like I do not get Instagram. I'm an old whatever. And one of my friends and collaborators who I'm very close with, like, because we support each other, because we go to each other's things, because we hire each other to do gigs when we want to work together. Like oftentimes in her social media posts, I will pop up, right? Because she's like, oh, I just did this like really cool thing using this knowledge that I gained from, at Leanna Keyes. Like you need to be mutually supporting each other, not just trying to extract value. You need to be creating value and creating community.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It makes me think about this great thinker. I think he's mostly a marketer, but he's I think a social and cultural thinker. His name is Seth Godin, and he talks about building tribes, and what both Gerardo, I'm sorry, Gerardo, am I mispronouncing your name?
No, that's okay. I go.
Okay. But what both you and Leanna were saying is about like building community. And so long as you're building community of people because in other words, as fringe as possible is the better. So if you're a person who's like a theater artist who really loves theater stories about eggs because you really loved Humpty Dumpty and you're obsessed with eggs and Humpty Dumpty, there will be a community of people all over the world. Maybe they're not the biggest community, right? Like they might not be like a pop stars community, but there'll be maybe hundreds of thousands of people who are just obsessed with painting eggs and making theater with painted eggs, And if you, to, Gerardo's point, be able to do it with just your iPhone and make a stop motion thing or whatever. And again, to Leanna's like, build community and give and talk about how great you are that you're into eggs, just like I'm into eggs, that community is there and they're going to be even more passionate about you because there's nowhere else to get it. If you can create something that they can't get anywhere else, and most times it's just about you being your most authentic self, that you, no matter how weird, no matter how, idiosyncratic you are, there's going to be someone else in the Netherlands, in Uganda, in Saudi Arabia, somewhere else in the world will be like, oh my God, I've been looking for somebody who's doing it, but I just didn't have the confidence or the time or the artistic ability to make the puppet show that I've always wanted to make. So I'm going to now start following you, So I think it's just about building community, being niche, be yourself, and recognize that they will come if you do the hard work of keep creating. And that's a lot of things that Seth Godin talks about, is that don't rely on doing one cool thing. It's about doing 1,000 cool things and recognizing that it takes time,
That's right. Oh, perfect segue to time sometimes being our biggest colonizer, but we're going to be good to it. We're going to close out a little bit with some of those same thoughts. I am going to toss it to Jessica and say, what are you taking with you that's going to help you never go back to the old ways? What are you taking with you into this future?
There's a phrase, and I don't know if we're swearing or not, but I'm swearing. There's a phrase that I mean, this is who I am. So when in this past year, been working on devising theater workshop with Bruce Lemon Jr. And one of as we were coming up with what this was, there was this moment of like, this is called "Fuck It, Let's Try," and that phrase has been a real good beacon for me, and one that I'd like to think I did before this, but maybe not quite with so much attention and so much focus on that. And that is definitely something that I am taking into the next year and future forever. Yeah.
Delicious, delicious, delicious. All right, Gerardo, you're up.
I would say, especially after this conversation, is moving forward fearlessly, and taking whatever comes, just taking a step, and even if you have no idea where you're going, just to trust that I'm moving forward, and to make room, to be fearless and make room.
Thank you, Leanna.
Recognize that you're part of a community. You are not a lone star, lone wolf. You are not the one star in the sky that is shining more brightly than all others. You are, in fact, part of a beautiful constellation, and you work best when you are taken in collectively. Work together. Make cool things with other stars.
Thank you. You got the last word, my friend.
Oh, boy. It's a lot with what just happened. Softening my heart to listen more, like I said before, I was working a lot before COVID, and this past year has forced me to slow down and listen to myself, to my community, to the people that I respect and admire, and to the people that I didn't know, or the people that I maybe marginalized and didn't feel like I needed to listen to as much as I needed to. And I really mean that genuinely. I know I'm talking a lot while I'm talking about listening, but that is the big thing that I'm like really deep listening, soft heart, open mind, listen,
Yes. What gems, my friends, what gems. In this last minute to close us out, I want to lift up the power of mentorship. I want to lift up the power of horizontal mentorship, that those who are seeking mentors, you also have someone to mentor. And I just want to lift up my mentor of over a decade, Diane Rodriguez, who we did lose last year. Okay, I'm going to hold it together. But this woman taught me so many things. But the number one thing she taught me is find the people that need you. And I want to ask all of you to do the same thing. Find the people that need you. Ask for who you need. And if somebody's not giving it to you, find them. There's many more who will. So I want abundance. Thank you all so much for sharing your time, your wisdom, your lessons. Thank you, Center Theater Group, for making the space for this, and all participants. I want to encourage you, please keep filling out that Menti. It's open throughout the day. We have another question we didn't even get to. We want to hear your answers. But for now, I'm going to point you in the direction of the reception room so you can find out where you're going next. All right, y'all.
Thank you for hosting. You're amazing.
Thanks.
Yes, fantastic
Absolutely.
hosting job. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes.
Peace, everybody.